joined this time by Coach Stikes from Fayette County High School in Georgia, who he's talked to us about soccer and fixing struggling program when he was a coach and now in administration. And Coach, I got you on for a minute because you in the last year and a half or so anyway, have hired a new football coach. And
yes,
he's doing a great job and all that. And I like to interview people kind of when they first hired a coach and then maybe a year later. So you're on the year later plan. You've had a full football season of your new staff and all that. And so, I get a lot. We probably get as many on as the main topic, I guess the best way to say it, that people are interested in that I may put something out on is this, because everybody wants a job. Like, I don't know if you know the exact number, but tell people about how many people apply for that football job.
Yeah, we had about 135 applicants.
Right. So there you go, guys.
From about 10 states. And that was coming for a team that we were 0-10 the year before we went through the process. So.
And that's what people don't – I know they understand it, but we try to educate. I'm really trying to educate, not trying to fluff people on how to get a job. I want to educate them on how for real is the best way to get a job, which is, one, understand that process. If 135 people applied and y'all – about how many did you guys interview, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I think we brought in 8 or 9 on our first round.
Okay.
And
so 127 didn't get interviewed.
That's right. And so some good applications.
It's not personal. But people act like if they didn't get an interview, they're upset when 128 people didn't interview. But also, those 8 or 9 that did interview, you can only hire one of them. So they sometimes feel slighted. But the truth is they were the cream of the crop. They was in the 95th percentile, 97th percentile of the people you saw resumes for. They should be honored by that. That's not a question. It's a statement. But I like to hear people. I just like to validate what I'm saying. I know I've been an AD, so I think people believe me when I say this stuff. But it's nice when you can verify that just a year ago, you all went 0-10. You hire a new football coach, and 135 people apply for the job. I mean, that is just where we are in hiring football coaches. So, Coach, tell me, what was something specifically you all were looking for when you were in the infant stages of getting resumes and gathering up who are going to be these 8 or 9 people that you interviewed?
Yeah, I think when we started the process, our coach resigned to look for some new opportunities professionally. And so when we put it out there at first, I went through all the applications, read everything. The thing I was looking for was, who might be a good fit with the kids that we have. So who have been in similar situations with kids like our kids, and what have they done there? I can tell you I wanted to see some personally. When I was looking at resumes, we had quite a few folks that, never spent more than a year or two somewhere. And that was something that kind of raised some red flags for me. We had, a lot of folks that for us were looking for a good fit, not necessarily wins and losses, although that matters on a resume, but, who's been places with kids like ours, that's had some success, but also who doesn't just define their success based on their win-loss record, who talks about academics, who talks about the classroom, who talks about culture, who talks about character, things like that are important to us as a community. The community we're in is very focused on academics. Schools first in our county. Grades come first. You're a student athlete, and we don't graduate football players or basketball players. We graduate scholars, and we wanted to find somebody that fit that mold.
Awesome, Coach. And that's every job is a little different for what they're looking for, but they're all looking for fit, and so sometimes that fit involves head coaching experience. Sometimes it doesn't. I can go off on some of my rants about what I think you should look for, but how much stock did you put into they'd been a head coach before, or they were familiar with the area and things like that?
I think it helped demonstrate that, they were a little bit ready to get started on day one. We wanted somebody that either had some head coaching experience or was kind of near the area and would be ready to start, building our program from the time they took over. Head coaching experience wasn't a requirement. but, I don't think it was a negative. I think out of the guys we interviewed, the majority had head coaching experience, but we also interviewed some guys that were coordinators that we thought, looking at their resume, it was obvious they knew what they were doing. And so I think it just depended. I think for us, that fit kind of trumped that head coaching thing. Who's been around places like us and
Right.
and who can come in and learn our culture quickly, so that then they can get down to their job.
I found that question is the most variance from place to place, meaning some people put an unbelievable amount of stock in it and some not at all, and everything in between. And the truth is, everybody started out, everybody got their first job somewhere. So I don't think you can solely say they had to have had head coaching experience. I do think if they get promoted or their coordinators, it's better when they're in that general area, because they kind of at least know the area, and that's something you don't have to worry about. It's hard to bring coordinators in from another state or from another part of the state, in my opinion. But other than that, I couldn't agree. So you guys get to the interviews, people come in and interview. What things stood out, and I obviously don't want you to say anybody's name, but just in general, what stood out for maybe good or bad things people would do in an interview that you could maybe help somebody that's interviewing, soon for a job?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had some folks that came in with all the answers before we even asked the questions, and they had a plan, and it didn't appear that they were very flexible with it. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it was very much, hey, I know how to fix you, and here's 100% what we're going to do from day one to day 365 of year one. Here's how it's going to look. And for us, that wasn't necessarily something we thought was a good idea. We wanted to have somebody that knew that they'd have to figure out what was going on from the inside first. We wanted a good plan. And I think that stood out to me was, if you had a good basics of a plan, but you also asked questions. To me, in the interview process, I liked when folks asked specific questions about the program, about what had been going on. Everybody brought in, a notebook. I can tell you about half the resumes I looked at seemed to be following a format that I think everybody in the state pretty much uses. But what stuck out was the folks that had kind of differentiated themselves, not just cut and pasted a program, but it kind of made it theirs, and kind of personalized it. But right. For me, I think it's that room for growth. And does that make sense to you, Coach?
Absolutely.
Because you don't know what you're getting into. And everybody can see on the outside, but once you're in somewhere, you don't really know what it looks like till you got your boots on the ground.
Absolutely.
And I wanted somebody that was, mature enough. We wanted somebody that understood that they understood the job, but also understood that, there's more than one way to skin a cat, There's Absolutely. More than one way to be successful. And so they wanted to take what we had and add it to their plans to make sure we could work together and be successful.
Yeah, and I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. I think, for some reason, everybody asks, I get a ton of questions on this topic. I don't know when I became the guru of this, as I didn't get every job I ever applied for and all that. But it does. I have done a lot of hiring, and now in HR, I do even more of it. But it is interesting how people, the fit of what they're looking for is different everywhere. So it's so hard. I said all that to say this. It's so hard for me to answer some of the questions people ask me. Like a question people always ask, what should I bring to the interview? Well, you know what the answer is? I have no idea. Because sometimes some places are looking for this, and some places are looking for that. In some places, you're better off having a very detailed plan of exactly what you're going to do, and in some places you're not. So my advice when I get asked that question is, what work have you done to learn this place? I mean, before you walk in the interview, what have you done to say, I understand this place? If the place is known as this fantastic weight training place, or they're great in the weight room or something, but they've struggled on the field, then don't go in bashing all the weight stuff. Like, talk about how we're going to build on that. And, but I wouldn't make a standard plan, even though, of course, I'm out here talking to people about all these documents and stuff I have. But I would never take what I did, cut and paste it, and give it the interview. That would be stupid. I don't even do that, and it's my stuff. I would have taken it and tweaked it for that school, and I would have tried to be as personal and as personable as I could have been for that school. Like if they had a great, I don't know, a great softball team, then we'd have some kind of way of honoring the softball team during football season. I would have talked about that in the thing. I think you got to make it personal. And so instead of thinking there's this magic template that if you take this notebook into the interview, they're going to like it, that's sadly mistaken by many people. Would you agree with that, Coach?
Absolutely. Look, everybody we interviewed brought in a spiral notebook or bound, and they were all great. Everybody had a great plan, and everybody we interviewed was a fantastic coach. But it's more than that, And I can tell you, sometimes it's in that interview, it's the little things that stand out. It's wearing that suit and tie with that tie that matches the school colors, or sometimes there's some things like that make you stand out. But to me, it's that it's not about those tricks, if you will, because it's not what you look like, it's not what you bring. It's about at least what we were looking for. It's about that interaction. Can you talk? Can you tell us who you are, what you believe? But have you done your homework? There were some kids.
It shows you care. I think sometimes with 135 people applying for the job, you guys don't get to see in an application who really cares about Fayette County and who doesn't.
That's right.
And the only time you get to see that's when you get that face-to-face interaction. So, again, my advice to people when they ask me what to bring, you better bring your best relationship face. You better bring your best personality skills. You better bring your best selling of the vision and all that other crap, whether you put a PowerPoint together or a notebook or you got all that's great. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I think you should do that. But again, all 120 of the 135 people would have put together a nice notebook nowadays. It's really not that hard to do. It's more about, do you know what's in that notebook? Can you sell it to people in 1 hour? Not that you copied and pasted it, but do you know it? And can you answer every question? And the people who can, and then also care about that place. So throw in what you know about this place. Talk about the place. Everybody that's sitting in a room hiring, it's they care about that place. You're the new guy if you get the job. So, my question to you next would be, so you guys select a candidate. And in full disclosure, Coach Nick Davis is the guy you hired, who is a friend of mine, a good man, and he's done a good job, and he's going to continue to do a good job. But regardless if I knew him or didn't, the next question would be, his job then, now the ball's in his court. And his job is to prove you right. Yep. And what in the last year, now you get into the thing, what in the last year have you seen, and I mean, obviously I don't want to get anybody in trouble, so if it's something bad, don't tell us. But what is something you've seen where you're like, that he explained it in the interview and now I see it happening?
Yeah, I think one of the things that stood out about Coach Davis, and one of the things that I really appreciate him, especially being a newer AD, is his willingness to, work together with folks, with other coaches in the building, with us. And so I think that's something this whole year that's been great, just keeping that line of communication open. We talk, one of the things that's important for me as the athletic administrator is I talk to my coaches at least a couple times a week while they're in season about what's going on, to try to make sure that, we're all on the same page. And he has been really open. Now, I'm not telling him what to do because I'm not, we hired him to do a job. I'm not telling him, hey, why'd you run the ball? Why'd you throw the ball? I don't care about that. I mean, I do. I stand on the sideline and get mad when it doesn't go right, But it's about, helping the whole school get better about what we're doing. And he's been great about, talking to other coaches and talking to the administrators about, hey, here's what we're doing, here's why. We would meet, semi-regularly just to talk about, things happening in the program, good and bad, and why things were going like they were and what we could do to fix them. And so I think that transparency has been helpful. I hope he'd say the same thing. I would say that as a coach, that was something that was important to me, is having a good working relationship with my AD. And as an AD, that's something I value too, is talking. Now that doesn't mean he doesn't bring me all his problems. I'm not saying that, and it's not a gripe session, but it's that collaborative relationship where,
Absolutely.
we know what's going on and can support him, and I've got his back, and he's got our back.
Yeah, absolutely. I was real happy with you guys hiring him, because I know him and I know he'll do a good job. And I've seen it in the last year, the team get better, and it'll continue to get better. I know they got a good team coming up, but most importantly, Coach, was getting that fit. And Coach Davis he knows that area, been a head coach. I mean, I know that's what it's about. So without getting my personal issues on here, I'm trying to, we'll keep it with professionally speaking. What's something you would advise any of the people, the 134 people that didn't get the job, that they should go back to doing to help for next time? And then I'll leave you with that. Did I lose you?